All right, welcome to the Sweet Talk. Today is Monday, June 7th, 2021, and I am your host, Kim Matina. And today, I am so happy to have back on my show, Miss Rebecca Cooney, and also her husband, Chris Cooney. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
So, Rebecca and Chris come to us from Washington State, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And Rebecca is an educator and specialist in strategic communication, online education, and effective communication in the virtual space. So that has a lot to do with remote learning. And Chris Cooney is an educator and specialist in case-based teaching and ed tech. And you are also an Adobe education leader as well. So welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you. We're
So you guys work together?
Well, yes.
Sure.
He's in the Carson College of Business, and I am in the Murrow College of Communication.
So same university.
Same university, different colleges.
Okay, so Chris, why don't you go first? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your role? Because I never heard of a specialist in case-based teaching position. What does that entail?
Yeah, so the case method for teaching business has been around. I think it originated at Harvard Business School. I want to say maybe the 30s or the 40s, right? So it's been part of their curriculum for a very long time. And so what that is that instead of just doing lecture or talking about theory or talking about hypotheticals, applications of theory, what we do is that Harvard Business is kind of the leader in this, but there are many institutions that will publish cases. And what the cases are is they look at a business problem in a real context. So let's say we were doing a case on Amazon. So it might be a case about maybe that they're looking at how are they going to respond to COVID. And so it's going to be based on real research that, a faculty member has gone and actually done, it's going to be a real situation at Amazon. Now, they might switch a couple things in order so they're not giving away intellectual property. But they're going to then say, okay, so now let's look at this, but let's maybe take a look at the human resources angle of this. Let's see, okay, what are the problems related to COVID from a human resources standpoint? And so the idea is to teach students something like human resources, but then place it in the context of a real situation so they can really see what it is to be in that person's shoes and to make decisions given that the knowledge of the research, knowledge of the theory, but then they get that sense of what is it to be like in a business decision-making situation. So
wow, that's interesting.
And the conversation then is very dynamic. So it starts with, so what's the basics of the case, and then what would you do? What do we see as the options are, and what are the criteria we should consider? So it's very conversational in the classroom, and it's a lot of fun. And I'll tell you, I teach 2 sections of the same class. Those 2 sections can turn out in a very different place.
Yeah.
Even though with the same case. So it's a lot of fun. So that's what it is.
That's cool. So in K-12, I think it would be called project-based learning.
Yes, that's exactly right. I could have just said it's project-based learning, instead of all that. You get the idea.
I just have to make sure I'm on the same same thought process here.
Yes, it's the same thing.
Well, that's awesome. Well, it makes it more meaningful, so that's great that you do that. That must be very interesting. And Rebecca, why don't you tell us a little bit about your position there at the university?
So I'm a scholarly associate professor, and my emphasis is strategic communication, but I teach a lot of classes that are really in digital communication, some public relations, integrated communication. My favorite is digital, though. I love to teach all things related to web and metrics.
So going remote teaching this past year wasn't a big deal for you, right?
No, what was the big deal? It was both of us have taught online for some, I don't know, I'm like 6 years, you're somewhere around there, 6 or 7 years. So we've been teaching online for a very long time in the traditional asynchronous 100% online environment. What was new to us in the pandemic was the live synchronous, so more the virtual teaching where the students are live there with us through Zoom and we're running interactive meetups. That was more more new to us and what we developed new competencies in for our distance delivery.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's fair to say for teachers at where I'm at too. In my district, the same thing, like, teaching through a screen to students,
Right.
virtually and then in person. It's an adjustment, but it's
Yeah.
almost over.
But it worked. I mean, even teaching
It
digital. In
worked.
fact, in some ways, it worked better because we had. For one example, would be that our teams, all the students work in teams for 15 weeks, and getting them to be in class physically at the same time can be a challenge. There's always one missing, or and meeting up with them one-to-one. It was actually more efficient in many ways through Zoom because they could share screen. There wasn't a lot of noise and a lot of distractions going on around us. So both of us had a really positive experience with the student teams where we had more meaningful one-on-ones with small groups.
Well, that's great. I think because you're at the higher level and at the university
Yeah.
level, and I think that makes a big difference too. I'm glad to hear that because that's at least it's a positive feedback that you had experienced, so that's awesome. So we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about
No.
analytics. And
Yes.
I'm really happy that you're going to be showing off Google Analytics and how you can use it in the curriculum, because not so many people are really into data or into research and gathering data and using that data and tracking it and getting some matrix on it, So I think this topic is really interesting, and I think it's important because a lot of students. I mean, now I'm in the middle school. I'm at 7th and 8th grade students, and we need to expose them more to data and spreadsheets and graphs and metrics, and so I think this topic is very important, and hopefully it'll expose and introduce and have an impact on the audience, and hopefully they'll use it. So why don't you tell us,
Yes.
what you do and
Sure.
some of the examples that you were sharing with me before.
It's really interesting. So both Chris and I started. We started teaching Google Analytics in a class that we both taught at Murrow College. He moved over to Carson a couple years back, but this class is designed for students who are going to work in teams, and they create campaigns, basically, and they use various tools to create those campaigns. They use tools like Weebly, they use social media tools, but they use Google Analytics and search engine optimization as part of the overall design of the project. And when there's almost no reason to do digital campaigns if you're not going to measure them. And it was really important, we felt, from a foundational standpoint, and also for the students as they go off into the workplace, they need to be able to have that return on investment showcase what is working and what isn't working. And how do you know if you're meeting user needs? How do you know if users are engaging with your content the way you want them to? How do you know if you're if you want to monetize your content, you have to know how to track user behavior. So Google Analytics it's technically a free tool, but it's not always free to integrate it into other platforms. And so that's why we use Weebly as one of our primary tools, is because Weebly is a web content management system that allows Google Analytics and search engine optimization integration for free, where some of the other ones you have to have paid subscription levels in order to be able to truly integrate the Google Analytics platform at the level we want to.
Okay.
So they integrate the Google Analytics platform into their Weebly site, and then we start to teach them how to really understand and Cole, what is it that they are looking at? What are these metrics and audience behavior and conversions and all of the other categories that we look at? And then we also have them look at how the users interact not only with their websites, but their social channels, their paid ads, their HTML emails that they create. And they learn from, we would say 98% this is their first exposure to Google Analytics. And at the same time that they're utilizing the tool in real time, they're also going through the beginner and advanced courses to in their pathway to certification. And so they're doing all of it at the same time.
So what kind of certification is this? Like, so they're doing two separate things, you're telling me.
Yes, but they're partnered.
Together. Right.
Yeah.
So
it's called the GAIQ.
GAIQ. Okay.
Which is the Google Analytics Individual Qualification. And there's a beginner's course and an advanced course that they have to take in order to move forward to sit for the exam. All of it is free and accessible, which is so amazing to be able to offer that to our students. But we do it in a guided fashion. So these students there's nothing stopping them from doing it on their own. But most of them won't, because it's daunting, right? When you say it's scary.
Yeah. I think the thing that strikes me we're both teaching, junior level, senior level students.
Mm-hmm.
And so we think of these students as being very digitally savvy, right? And what's surprising is that they don't understand that their interaction with this media is generating a lot of content, right? And a lot of data about their behavior. And that's been productized, that's been, turned into that's how Google makes a lot of money, right? Is their advertising. And so there's a whole conversation that happens around that, but that it starts with that realization that once they see how much information is gathered as people interact with sites, as people interact with social media, as people respond to ads, and even just browse the web, right? And that they can then see all that behavior, and then they can, once that kind of initial, whoa, this is a lot of information, then we go through the process through this, through the certification, through the training and the classroom work to say, okay, so that's a little bit overwhelming, but how do we take this overwhelming content that now is starting to make sense to them and start to make decisions with it?
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you this question, because there's a couple things here that I wanted to mention. First, I was just on someone's podcast last week, and I said the same exact thing that you just said, that the kids are good users, but not necessarily, they don't dive deep into it. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you on that one. The second thing I wanted to ask you was, the students at your level must be aware of metrics to some degree, like in Facebook, right? Like if you
would think,
okay, let's take Twitter, and they measure the tweets and see how much reach and organic reach, and and they measure, do they even know that even is, do they even
I would say that they're savvy about followers, fans, likes, shares, comments, followers. But what I think they don't understand fully, and this is what we teach them, is how you can influence that behavior, how you can grow your audience, how you can reach new audiences, and that there's things that you do in your content and in your placement of content and in your use of keywords. Like there's a lot of things that go on that's way beyond the likes, the shares, the comments. Those are wonderful metrics, but they're just the tip of the iceberg.
You're right. I totally agree, because honestly, like I didn't know about Twitter analytics until maybe a year and a half ago.
And it's free.
And it's free. And
yes.
And you're right. Like in order for you to know your audience, you need to look at this stuff. And I'm like, with students, like I can see them wanting to know information, like this information, and maybe if they have a YouTube channel, because kids are on YouTube, they have a brand.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Do you find them like even on YouTube? Do you find them like even curious about that for the ones that have a YouTube channel, or not
I
at
think they're
all?
curious, but
Well, I think so. If they have something where they're actively trying to manage some kind of personal brand,
TikTok and Instagram would be the top two, I think, and
TikTok,
Snapchat.
sure, yeah. But I think that there's the awareness where they're very much focused on the likes and their individual view of it. And so even if they're unless they're really progressed as far as how sophisticated they are with their branding, it's still about likes. It's still about getting followers. It's still about making connections. And so once we really start to look at the analytics and start to look at big audiences, right? Once we take the analytics and say, no, how would we turn this into an advertising campaign? They realize that they can buy, thousands of potential clicks by people's interests, right? That it could be they're interested in beauty products or they're interested in coffee or something. But what they don't get, that there are these bigger aggregations of people based on behavior, based on interests,
Right.
that all of that feeds into. And so they understand influencers, but what they don't understand is how hundreds of influencers then build big markets. And that's and make enable.
It's rarely accidental.
Yeah.
And
that's
pretty strategic.
It's not accidental. Yeah. And so it's that progression as they start with they have these ideas for these businesses. And it used to be, because we live in a small town, it's like, oh, what if we had a yoga studio, or what if we had a new brew pub? But what it quickly progresses to a very much more sophisticated idea of maybe what's possible, if they're looking at a business, because they realize that they could reach an audience that's far greater and far more diverse than what they might see in their university and even their local community.
Okay, so this is really interesting, and I want you to. I mean, I can talk about this for a lot longer, but I don't want to, because I want to really see what you are going to share.
Sure.
Because I'm really curious, because you introduced it, you explained that your students are really not familiar with it, not comfortable with analytics at all, and then they do all this stuff, they market, and then they come up with your project and your end results. And at the end, do you find them to be more comfortable with this data?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, many of them really geek out.
That's good, because
many of them do.
That's the point, right? Like, I mean, so
many of them, because of this work, because they get the vocabulary, because they learn the fundamentals,
get
because
excited?
they get excited, and they get jobs.
Yeah.
They get internships because they're able to speak the language and help understand. For both of our projects, and we do have a different approach. My teams create initiatives that are based on things around maybe mental health awareness or sustainable living or use of recyclable clothing. The one that I have as an example is a group that did a whole campaign around what it's like to live a van life, hashtag van life, where people live and work out of a van or some kind of vehicle across the country. His is more of mock companies, but he also integrates a tremendous amount of Adobe in his projects, including Adobe XD.
My students develop a mobile mobile application.
Yeah.
They prototype it. They don't actually do the coding, but they prototype it. So it starts out, they have to identify a need and then come up with an app that's going to meet that need. But then they have to bring it to market. They have to, develop the website, develop all the social media channels and the content, and then advertise it.
And branding.
So kind of back to your question is, I think it's also empowering, because at the end, they get a sense of, hey, we took this from an idea to a mobile app to a website and we advertised it. We got people to show up on the site. And I think that maybe it's the first time they've done something like that. And so I think it's interesting to see some of them will really say, oh, analytics, that's where I love that. Or they say, now I understand really how to do the website, but I want to design it. Yeah. Or I really like writing, right? I just like talking to people and having conversations online. So it's interesting to see where they it's the different areas they get interested in. but I think overall it's empowering because, I'm sure it's the same for students in K-12 where they're about to go into college and they're wondering, what do I take with me? And so this gives them a really concise example of, I can take this with me. I took an idea all the way to where it's something that people could
Concept
interact
to
with.
fruition.
Yeah. So I think
empowerment's a good keyword for it. They're empowered. They now know how to look at a white sheet of paper that they create this amazing content and this concept. They build something. They start to push out messaging. They track that. They measure it. And then they can also articulate what the data is showing. And many of them get almost competitive about it, where they want to. Wait a minute. Why is everybody going to our homepage? We really want them to go to our product page. How are we going to influence that? And they figure out, well, you've got to put calls to action. You've got to create a campaign landing page. You've got all these different tools and techniques in order to help the user do what you want them to do as part of the mission of your campaign.
I can keep you on and talk about this for a while. We're gonna have to talk. I'm gonna have to write down my questions and then ask you after the show's over.
Yes. We can show you something if you want to see it.
Yeah. You know what? I just think this is great because I think the kids can really connect to it, and this is what the business world wants. Like, they want more engagement from their audience. So, and it's all about marketing, right? Isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I find that really interesting. All right. So let me write down my question, and then I want you to actually show. I have to write it down on a piece of paper.
Yes.
Okay.
How very old school of you.
No, that's great. We've got paper all around us right now with notes. I was good.
You want to share?
Do you have an example of, because what we didn't do, I didn't want to, and we could show analytics examples, but I think what's interesting is to talk about how they used analytics to kind of inform what they came up with.
Show yours.
Do you want to? Okay, so
share screen first.
Okay. But oops.
That's not it.
Okay.
There, next to there. There you go. Share screen.
Then I think it says like application window or something.
There we go.
Make sure you show the right one.
Is it?
Yeah, show the right screen.
Screen one. There you go.
Allow.
Yep.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Yep.
There it is.
Okay.
You
can, if we want to actually get into analytics, we can. But what I wanted to show is an example of where they actually use it and how they apply it. So the students in my class, they start with a problem and they have to develop what they perceive as a solution to that problem, and then develop the marketing, kind of the brand around that. And then from that, they have to build a mobile app based on that, and then they develop all the social media and the web content. So what you see here is an example of one of the finished products. And they go through a number of iterations throughout the semester based on how users interact with their site and feedback they get on their prototype of their mobile app. So what you see here is the final result of that feedback. So they've gone through maybe 2 or 3 iterations through the process. So what I thought would be interesting to talk through is just how what they find, what the end goal is to get people to come to the website, this is the website that they put together in Weebly. And then the goal is to get them to look at the prototype. And this is the prototype here that they've developed. And in this example here, Cabanel, I think it was all about managing capacity for restaurants as they open after COVID, and how ways that they could ensure that the social distancing and whatever the local guidelines are followed, but also that people who are looking for a restaurant to go to could figure out where they could get in at a place, and so that was their concept. So this was what they came up with, and so what they did then is they developed the website, developed the prototype, but then had the advertising campaign that would bring people to the site. So the first time that they do the advertising campaign, a lot of them would just send people to the homepage. And what they would realize is that they, and again, you're seeing the end results here. A lot of students had very little information here and just kind of expected people to find out where the prototype is and, just magically, figure out how to give them feedback.
Yeah.
And so what they learned then is, you've got to have some really clear instructions. You've got to have the buttons. And then here they can test, you can go in here and test the prototype. Okay, great. And you can give some feedback here if you want to. You can go through the prototype that they developed. And so then ultimately if someone were to, the goal of the overall campaign was to get some feedback either here or back on the main page to just leave feedback through this form here. So that was their goal. And so when they put the website together, they said, oh yeah, no problem. And they put it all out there. Mm-hmm. And then everyone went to the homepage, right? So, darn it, how could we change things to get them to actually go there? And so they would write blog posts and they would say, so talk a little bit more about, this is their final reflection here. But let's see.
How many kids were in the team?
They had 4 students in a team. So here are the students actually for this team. I'll give them a little shout out here. So this was Haley, Claire, Stephanie, and Mingyan. And so, these 4, they did it all virtually. And this is their final presentation here. And I think this was definitely one of the best teams. But I think Mingyan was in China at the time.
Yes.
For the semester. So they worked remotely. So anyway, but what they would do is down here, they would, if they had an update to the prototype or if they had a topical blog post that they put together, and we see actually a mistake here. I tried to get them to do is do this, right? So if you're going to do a blog post, have a link to a call to action to go to look at the prototype, to go to feedback. And then from this blog post, they could generate a social media post. They could generate an advertisement. And then better yet, just have them land on this blog post and start their journey there. Mm-hmm. So they started using analytics and seeing how long people were on the page. Where did they go from this page?
Referral traffic.
Yeah, how many people actually made it to the prototype page, which was again the goal. So it went from how do you design a website to how do you design a website that's going to engage the customers in the way you want. So that kind of realization that you just can't build it and they will come, or if you build it and they come, but then they not necessarily go where you want them to go. Yeah. So that was what I think we taught them through analytics, right? So the analytics would show the page views, the number of scrolls, the time on the page,
the referral,
how many people clicked in, the click pass through the website,
where they landed, where they left.
Yeah. And again, through the whole time, they just had no idea that any of this is the part that continues to surprise me every time, is they're just like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that they knew that, and isn't that, it's surprising, but they didn't have that knowledge. And so once they did, to be able to, again, to not just make it a big scary thing or something, but say, okay, here's how you use that. Here's how that can be empowering. And then here's how you can talk about how you
I would say
that.
We spend about 11 weeks in metrics. So they start from very tiny knowledge to pretty good functional knowledge of analytics.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I think you mentioned you had like a 15-week class. So that's a really long time to really dive deep into it and get like a quality end result, which is awesome. I wish I had that much time.
And at the same time, they're taking the courses, the beginners and advanced courses. So they're really getting that deep dive in the analytics tool, because they're learning it in real time and you're actively engaged with it. But then they're also taking they're working through the course to achieve and to earn for one thing, complete their courses, but then hopefully go on to get their certification, which is one of their options.
So the Google Analytics piece of it, not not the marketing piece.
Mm-hmm.
My dog's barking. It's okay. It's all real. So now I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, the Google Analytic piece, right? That part of the project. When they create their account, they have to connect the social media platform, the website, and connect it to that, right? So are
the ads.
And the ads. So are they using like, are they creating a whole new, just say, Twitter account for this project?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
the teams create their 2 social channels.
Okay. What do you give them? What choices do you give them?
Well, really I had Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, but some also can use Pinterest, LinkedIn.
Okay. And then, so now
YouTube
you're talking about ads. So do they use Google AdSense in there as
Google
well?
Ads, yep.
Really?
They do. In both classes, they get a small budget to run. I mean, we're talking a little bit about money, like $50 or so.
Each team gets, well, mine get $100 across 2 campaigns.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But it goes very far. You'd be surprised.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
They learn a lot, and it's really wonderful for them to be able to see the connection between how web and social and ads and email, everything connects.
Well, yeah.
And analytics does that. So they have analytics is if the goal is to get them to the website, they get there from somewhere, and analytics is tracking, whether they're coming from an ad, whether they're coming from another website, whether they're coming from social media. It's tracking that, and then again, the part that they get excited about, but also it's kind of new and overwhelming in a bit, is that you can say, okay, so how is my Facebook traffic doing compared to my ad traffic? How is my display advertising traffic doing compared to my Google, the AdWords? But then also, what keywords are working well? What types of images, if I'm showing them on different ads, are people more likely to click on? And then they feed that back to the site. The analytics tells them not only where they come from, but what they clicked on. And then if they're looking for more pictures of people eating or looking for more pictures of people laughing together, they get that information from analytics, and then that kind of feeds back into their marketing.
So are they actually creating ads in Google AdSense too?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, wow.
That's a whole other topic. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So like, this is really, I'm finding it really interesting. I really think it has so much value that you're doing this mock PBL and you're really giving them like skills that they can use when they graduate. I think that's
also a great portfolio piece. They
exactly. I was thinking the same thing. When they go on an interview where they can show it. That's awesome. You guys are doing great work. I really want to take your class. You guys inspired me. I want to do this in my middle school now.
Yes, it's really.
I think that would be amazing. I think that would be.
I don't have 15 weeks though.
Oh, that's true.
You can do it. We've done it in. You could do it. We've done it in an abridged 6-week, and we've done it in a abridged 10-week.
Well, and also the campaigns themselves only run 1 or 2 weeks because that's really all we can afford. And so even to give them a little window into it, right? Maybe it would be, I don't know, like some kind of project that the school was doing that they needed to promote.
Adobe XD prototype that they have to push out, because I think that is such a valuable skill where they actually build an app, a prototype of a mobile app that they have to, promote and push out to get people to do user testing.
So is that what you used? Is that what you showed on the website?
Yeah.
So what was that called again? Adobe what?
Adobe XD.
You're not sharing your screen.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. X like X-ray.
Adobe XD.
Here, let me share.
Okay.
And Adobe XD he does a really great job of partnering the Adobe products inside the Google curriculum, where I have not dived into that yet.
I can show another one too, because we've already used this one. But here's GenChef, for example.
Okay, GenChef.
And here's their site, and then this would be their prototype. And I mean, CapNows is really good too, but GenChef's another one. So they built this whole thing in Adobe XD, and it's all clickable, right? So I think this one is clickable. There we
Is
go.
that
it's a
free? Adobe XD?
It is. So it's free. It's freemium, right? So they've got a free version, and the limitation. So an individual student can do a lot with Adobe XD. Where the free kind of becomes paid is when they're doing collaboration.
Okay.
So
when you have teams working together.
Yep.
Adobe's brought a lot of new features around collaboration in XD, where students can work just like you would in Google Docs.
But they have student pricing with limited subscription. So if you
They
have
absolutely do.
just a 3-month class or whatever, 10 to 12-week class, they would only have to pay for that period of time.
Well, and shout out to Adobe because they gave us I think it was 6-month free license, and so
for our students.
It's not
COVID.
doesn't hurt to ask. But because it was for a project, right? And so not only did they use Adobe XD to create their app prototypes, but they also used them to create their presentations. And because they could collaborate on them together. So you're just like they would with the Google Docs and the presentation tool.
And the Google Slides and the Google Sites are sometimes used also. So there's a lot. We use a mix. We use a tremendous amount of Google and Adobe tools in the curriculum.
And Adobe.
So you don't use the Adobe application to make the web page?
No, we use Weebly. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the main reason that we use Weebly is because right now they are the only CMS, content management system, that's free, that will allow our students to integrate Google Analytics, so the UA or the GA4 code, which is how you connect your website to Google Analytics, as well as search engine optimization through headlines, descriptions, and key terms across all of the pages, because that is also really important as part of Google Analytics and metrics tracking.
You know, like your
it's
course,
the only one.
I remember. It's just funny because it's a business class, right? And you just took it and made it a 21st century class that made it, and you made it so meaningful, where the kids understand, like they see the likes and the shares and the comments, so they can connect to it. And then you're actually teaching them all about the things that they never really cared about before.
Or new to care about, right?
Care about, but in their little microcosm, right?
Yeah.
And you're saying,
the funniest is when we have them design ads at the beginning of class, and by the end of class, it's already showing metrics. They see it so real time that they are just.
I think
their minds are blown.
Great. You guys really inspired me. I tell you the truth, because you took the old fashioned, like I said, business class. The old-fashioned, boring class that I took, and you really turned it around and applied modern-day tools and data, and applied it to a real-life situation. I think I'm so thankful that you came on and shared it. I really think that, and I think you need to come back on.
Okay, for a part 2.
And you need to really go over Google Analytics, because I think this is a nice introduction to what you did and how you kind of mashed it all together. And I'm sure there's so much more you can talk about, but I think it would be even better if you can actually give a demo of the analytics part, so that people can actually see and understand
how it all ties.
And understand exactly how it ties in, and see the data in real time. I mean, I don't even know if people on, out there in social media, I'm sure some people, maybe most people know about the analytics part, but do they really look at it? I never really do.
I don't know. It's a lot. If you don't know what you're looking at, it's a little overwhelming.
It's definitely overwhelming. And I'll tell you the truth. I'm one of those people, when I get the emails and I look at it, I just scan it. And then sometimes I dive into it and I'm like, I don't know what I'm looking at, because it is
or what to do with it. So you've got this information. And so you say, one of the things that we teach is how to establish a metrics goal. you have to establish your key performance indicators, your baseline metrics. What are
And
you
that
trying
all
to
makes
achieve
sense.
in your
Yeah.
metrics?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so we also teach that part because it's one thing to look at the data, but if you don't really know what to do with the data,
Yeah.
it's not that helpful,
It's
right?
not
So we
helpful.
teach them how to understand what to do with that
And I
data.
think that's the part I think that would make it easier, at least in my head, to see that part of the Google Analytic part and the data, and then how you can say, oh, okay, you have that. So many people came and visit and they clicked on this page, and this is
Yeah.
why they
Right.
did, something like, just to make a connection. Because I think it's important for the young people, even in high school, like,
Mhm.
juniors and seniors, like, even to be aware of these things. Like, I really don't know if they, like you said, most of them don't. Like, they just see the likes, they see the comments, they see the reach or the shares, and
Right.
they don't dive deep into it.
Well, and
I,
also to be aware of what they're sharing and what,
yeah,
that they're by even clicking, by just scrolling, they're creating
creating that
they're
profile.
creating a profile, right?
Right.
And that's being used
Digital footprint.
Yeah, the digital
Right.
to make
footprint.
money, right? And
Yeah,
that's not altogether a bad thing, but if they're not aware of it, it's kind of not good. So if they're
yeah,
more aware of it, at least then they know that that's happening, and they know that if they're contributing to something, they're kind of partially the product, right?
yeah,
That
exactly. And
but
then it's
that
funny that you say that, because my son, he told me, Mom, you got to watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix.
yes,
Yes.
And I watched it the other day, my husband and I was like blown away, blown away. I had no
Yeah.
idea half of that stuff was even a thing. And
right,
now I'm
right.
here, you're having a conversation with you two, and you're actually saying all the things that I saw on that movie. It's crazy.
Yeah, and we're trying to teach very responsible practices, which
Right.
Yeah, but like
But
you said, it's
but
digital footprint. Like, now next year I have to teach digital citizenship. And what is one thing that I'm going to teach, because I saw that movie, was how big businesses use your data. Part
yes,
of the digital citizenship piece that I'm gonna introduce to the kids at middle school,
yeah.
because like you said, they're creating that profile and they don't really understand it. You know,
Over a long time, more time than they think,
yeah,
that profile has been built, and the value that's created from that is substantial.
yeah,
And they don't really get to share a lot of that. I mean, that we could get into other conversation about that, but I think to switch, to turn that around and say, okay, but you can be empowered in this. You can really make a difference. You can you can educate people. You can communicate with people in a more effective way. You can reach an audience that you never thought was possible. That's the good
you
side
can
of it,
impact
right?
social change.
And
You can build
absolutely.
awareness
yeah,
about causes and organizations. There's a lot of positive things you can do
But
with
if
that knowledge.
if they're just left with overwhelm, then they just kind of shut off. And
they
I
shut
think
off,
that's
they
the
shut
missed
down.
opportunity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It is a missed opportunity. Yeah. Wow, this was so awesome. So glad that you guys came on and shared this. I definitely want you
Yeah.
guys to come back for part 2. But
Okay.
we have
Okay.
to do it
Will do.
sooner than later. Like, right now I'm scheduling for October, but you guys will have to schedule something sooner than
We'll do a
that.
special
We'll do a
session.
special, yeah, you'll have a special episode.
Yeah,
There you
and
go.
we can get more into it. It was hard to figure out what to talk about in a half hour.
Right.
I know.
But right, and but I think if we
This
want
was
to
a
get
nice
more into it,
introduction, though. Like, this was a
yeah,
nice overview of your, I'm going to call it PBL,
Yeah.
and how
yeah,
you used all that data and created, like, the ads and the marketing scheme. And I mean, this was wonderful. I appreciate it. I hope the other people, the viewers, will appreciate it as well. So I'm really thankful that you came on and took the time, because I think it's so important. And my head is spinning now on trying to incorporate something for my 8th grade students next year. So this was great. I really appreciate it. And definitely we have to do a part 2.
Okay.
And then,
okay,
but we have to get more, like, data driven, like with the Google
yeah,
Analytics
we
piece.
will.
All right.
We'll
We'll
get, we'll
dig
get,
deep.
If
we'll
that's
dig
what you
deep.
want, Kim, we can do
Well,
that.
we can do it.
I just think it's it'll bridge it. Like,
Yeah.
you guys came on, you shared your overall project, and I think now we need to see more deep into the connection on what's going to drive all that content, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's important. I think the young people need to realize, like, you have to know what to do with data, and you have to know how to interpret it. And, if you're collecting it, you got to know what to do with it. So I think it's important. So if you show your Google Analytics sheet, or I don't know what you call it, dashboard,
The dashboard.
Dashboard.
There you go. Yeah.
okay, and then you just go over, like, and make the connection. I think it might help sink in a little bit
Sure.
easier.
Okay.
So
Yeah, we can do
this
that.
was great. Thank you for coming
Yeah.
on today.
Yes, thanks for having us.
We're
Yeah,
gonna
thank
we're
you.
gonna stop here. We're gonna have part 2. I'll talk to you after I end the broadcast. We'll figure out a date. But what I'm gonna do really quick is share my screen. Let me get out of some things. I have too many tabs open. All right. So if you want to check out my website, you can go to thesweettalk.com. That's the SUITE talk.com. And I usually have my website tab open, so I apologize for the wait. On the homepage, you'll see the latest episode and podcast here. And you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel, join the Facebook group. I am on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and you can also subscribe to my newsletter. Alice Keeler and I wrote a new book. It's called Teaching with Google Jamboard, and it just came out last week. It is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. If you'd like to check out the past episodes, you can click on the episode page, and you can see all of the show notes and the topics here in my spreadsheet. Whenever it loads, there it goes. And if you want to be a guest on my show, on the homepage, I forgot to show you, you can scroll down and you can fill out my guest form. Here it is. And help me pay it forward and be a guest on my show. Right now, I'm scheduling for October. So you can certainly, schedule something, and we can get you on the calendar. And with that being said, I'm back. All right. So until next time, everyone, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys being on and sharing. And have a great evening, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.